Hi everybody, I'm back, and today I'm celebrating Autism Awareness Month by discussing how Bridgerton gave us a neurodiverse love story, and then proceeded to ruin it in 5 seconds flat. Spoilers ahead for Season 3 of the Netflix series, as well as the 6th novel in the books. I already mentioned this once before in my video I made about Season 1, but just to be clear, I haven't actually read the Bridgerton books. I do, however, know enough about the books to know that the show is basically fan fiction at this point, so I feel comfortable discussing it as its own separate entity. Now, if you're at all familiar with the show, you'll know that the love story I'm talking about here is that of Franchesca Bridgerton and John Sterling, Earl of Kilmartin, who meet and marry in the 3rd season after Francesca makes her debut. Unlike her sister, Eloise, Francesca is actually eager to get married and move out of her family's home, because even though she loves them, she's an introvert who longs for a little peace and quiet, which she can't get with her mother and siblings constantly around. Basically, as soon as the show expanded on Francesca's character, I and many other people noticed that she seemed very neurodivergent coded and showed signs of being on the autism spectrum. She has a special interest in pianoforte, struggles with social cues, gets overstimulated easily, avoids eye contact, and is constantly stimming by tapping her fingers or playing with her rings. Whether this was intentional or not on the part of the actress and the showrunners, I couldn't tell you, but either way, plenty of autistic people, including myself, have been quick to adopt her as unofficial representation, along with her love interest, John, who exhibits many of those same traits. And since this is the internet, this is where I feel compelled to point out that no, not all autistic people share these traits. It's called a spectrum for a reason and presents differently for different people. Also, just because I, an autistic woman, see myself in Francesca does not mean that someone who is neurotypical is somehow barred from doing the same. I don't want anyone in the comments acting like I'm trying to spin it that way, because I'm not. And if any commenters come in trying to use autistic as an insult, trust me when I say you'll be promptly blocked, and that my doing so is the equivalent of flipping you the bird. Moving on, Francesca and John first meet at a party where they both wander outside in search of a break from the constant stimulation. From there, they realize just how much they have in common, starting with their shared love of comfortable silences. And big props to the actors here, because you would think that the lack of dialogue would be a hindrance and not a help to their storyline, but these two were able to perfectly portray what they're feeling and how much they like each other through simple glances and gestures alone. Their story manages to be romantic without relying on witty banter or sexual tension, neither of which are bad things, but we do see a lot of them in romance stories, so this very sweet, gentle love story was really refreshing. My favorite part of their story, though, is when Francesca meets John on the street and he remarks on some music playing in the background. Francesca says she doesn't like it because it's too fast-paced, and John rushes off. Initially, she thinks she's offended him or put him off in some way, but it turns out he was hurrying away so he could rearrange the music to her tastes. The guy just hyper-fixated, that's all. Not only is this my favorite moment in their story, but it might be my favorite moment in Bridgerton overall. While it might not be the grandest of romantic gestures, it is extremely personalized to Francesca and shows that he listened to everything she said. This was the moment John Sterling proved himself to be a walking green flag. Plus, he's gorgeous. Just saying. Through the season, though, Violet Bridgerton is shown having her doubts about Francesca's relationship. Not because she dislikes John, but because it looks very different than the idea of love she has in her head and what she experienced with her own husband back in the day. That, and she thinks it would be better for Francesca to be with someone extroverted who could bring her out of her shell. Which really hits close to home for me as an introvert myself. My entire life, people have been trying to push me towards activities I don't want to do or hang out with people that I don't want to in the name of bringing me out of my shell. And to a certain extent, I can understand why. Obviously, it was in my best interest that I develop sufficient social skills and make friends growing up. But a lot of the time, it really did feel like people were pushing me towards these things because they just assumed I would be happier playing kickball rather than being on the swings by myself, which I definitely wasn't. I got hit in the face with the ball. A lot. And I think that was what resonated with me so much about Francesca's story in Season 3. She really had to stand firm and prove to her family that she knew what she wanted, and that just because her relationship with John looked a little different than what they were expecting, that didn't make it any less meaningful or important. True love doesn't have to rely on grand gestures and long speeches. Sometimes it's quiet, and that's okay. That was the moral of Francesca and John's story. That is, before the show completely ruined it. And here's where I have to get into the events of the book a little bit, because John does eventually die, and Francesca ends up remarrying to his cousin, Michael, who has been gender swapped in the show as Michaela Sterling, introduced at the end of season 3. I did hear some outcry when this change was first revealed, but most of it seemed to come from people who were upset about the gender swap, which didn't make much sense to me. The show already hadn't been following the books faithfully, and I'm always happy to see more queer representation. Because honestly, Francesca's ending in season 3 still would have been ruined regardless of whether Michaela had been a man, woman, or non-binary. The problem wasn't with her gender, or even her being introduced this early. It was in how Francesca reacted to meeting her.
And you, Miss V? I am...
That's right, after giving us a season-long story about how love looks different for different people and we shouldn't judge based on preconceived notions of what it looks like, the show decides to throw all of that out and say, oh yeah, none of that was real. True love really is all about getting sweaty and tongue-tied right from the start. It's an absolute slap in the face, and it turns John from Francesca's first great love into just a placeholder or a lavender marriage. Now, we don't actually know yet whether Francesca is gay, bi, pan, or something else entirely. But if their intention was to make her a lesbian and for John to be her beard until she was able to be with Michaela, there was a way for them to do that without disrespecting John. They could have written their marriage as one of convenience, built on platonic love rather than romantic, but that's not what they gave us. It was disappointing to say the least, especially for those of us who could see ourselves and our desires reflected in Francesca and John. I do want to end on a light note, though, and say that I think this storyline is still salvageable. The show is just going to have to do some serious backpedaling where Michaela is concerned, and really double down on the fact that Fran and John do love each other, so his death can be given the weight that it deserves. I also hope that they don't suddenly transform Francesca into some sort of social butterfly once she's with Michaela. Have her gain some confidence, sure, but it feels like too many people already see being an introvert as some sort of flaw to be corrected, which it isn't. I hope the writers can recognize that, and continue to be respectful of what Francesca wants out of life and her relationships. Thus concludes my thoughts on Francesca's story so far. I really hope this video wasn't too rambly for you guys. It was sort of an impromptu thing so I could get my thoughts out of my head. I'll have another video coming out soon that will be a little bit more organized. So if you don't want to miss that, then make sure you hit the subscribe button. Happy Autism Awareness Month, everyone. Stay safe, stay brilliant, and I'll see you in the next one.